This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Welcome. I guess I'm going to run today's meeting for lack of anyone else doing it. So I have an agenda for folks in person, and then for folks who are online, the agenda is really brief. It basically entails public speak, new business, which we'll talk about our purpose and our focus for this committee, and then some logistics and meeting cadence going forward, plus obviously introductions as well. Why don't we start with introductions, and then we do have a public speak item, and then I'll go through the rest of it, but Connie does need to leave. So Connie, why don't you go ahead and start us off, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah. Connie Denham. I use she, her pronouns, and I sit on city council and worked with Councilor Jadzik and a few other councilors to bring this forward. Obviously, this is a huge concern for residents right now, being able to stay in their homes with the rising cost of rent. So I appreciate the opportunity to work with all of you, and I look forward to kind of the discussions moving forward.
Great, thank you, Connie. And then I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name. Is it Jana or Jana?
It's Jana. Yeah.
Perfect. Since you're the other person online, why don't we go to you next to do your intros, if you don't mind?
Great. Sure. Thank you. Hi, I'm Jana Tatro. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the chair of the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. I've been doing affordable housing work most of my career, and I currently work at Community Action Pioneer Valley. So I actually see it now on the other side, working with tenants who are facing rent instability.
Great, thank you so much. I'll go next, and then I'll pass it around to the rest of the folks here. So my name is Phyllis Jadzak. I use she, her pronouns. I'm also on city council along with Councilor Gunham. We are the two council representatives on this committee, and worked together with Councilor Smith and Peak to put this forward back in the spring. So excited that we're finally able to meet and that this committee is joining. Briefly, I am in my day job a small business owner, so I co-founded and run a DEI workplace consulting company, and that takes up most of my time besides being on city council. I'll pass it over to you next, Kevin.
Sure. Kevin Perry from Norwich Properties. I'm a developer and landlord based out of Easthampton. So myself and David Boyle, I think we have the developer and landlord kind of point of view bring it to the committee.
Okay. I'm Carolyn Cushing. I am she, her pronouns, and I have lived in Easthampton since 2000, seen the big changes in the city. And I live on Main Street, and I have an apartment. I'm a landlord, a very, very small landlord, and I have been coming to city council meetings for various reasons, and also encountering the tenants and residents who are having problems and listening to what they're saying. And I think it's important that we work to address this problem to keep Easthampton vibrant in the way it is and don't gentrify.
I'm Jim Cahan, semi-retired as it were until further notice. I identify as an independent theoretical physicist, have been studying numerous concerns with respect to that and the years to come. The last 2 to 5 years, if not longer, natural science is over 50 years. So I have a lot of information, a lot of resources, and I think the conversations have to start immediately. So this will be my first item to introduce when public speak arrives, presumably after Kayam has introduced himself.
And sorry, Jim, you're a renter, correct?
I am a resident since 2004.
Hi everyone, I'm Kayam Jamrang McQuaid. I currently sit on the Easthampton Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. I also coordinate the Easthampton Housing Coalition. I've been following the housing issue for years and really concerned, which is why I am so invested in this work. In my day job, I work for the Mass Donahue Institute. I'll also just say, because it's become a problem recently, all of my statements are my own and not that of the Donahue Institute. I can bring some of that data and background knowledge to this committee, hopefully. But yeah, definitely that being said, I'm not speaking for the Institute, not speaking for any of the work that we do. Yeah, I'm excited for the the work this committee is set up to do.
Great, thanks everybody. So we do have a few other folks who are on the committee who aren't present here tonight. And so I think we all were on the same email thread. Hopefully they'll be able to watch this recording, and then maybe I'll send an email out afterwards and just introduce or invite people to introduce themselves if they weren't able to be here tonight. So this is not the sum total of the committee, but it was quite challenging getting a time and date together. So this is just a starting point. We'll have more folks and we'll have more meetings coming forward. So the next thing then let's move to is we do have some time for public speak. I want to not quash the public speak part, but I want to just put a limit on it. So maybe 5 minutes, if that feels
5 minutes seems reasonable. I think I can
just 'cause we do
disseminate
have a
everything I need to.
So, but I want to make sure we have time for.
I appreciate that,
So,
Alicia.
go for it.
There are going to be some uncomfortable truths that I reveal, and they may sound very unbelievable, but they are indeed truths. There's enough evidence to the effect. Immediately, the biggest concern is with respect to the high toxicity of smart meter infrastructure, wireless in general. We now have evidence of the compromise to biological processes that, if not resolved, would be fatal in many instances relative to past environmental insults. 5 minutes is the amount of time it takes for oxygen starvation to occur when a person is exposed to a mobile phone. A test was done, studies were done earlier this year, which revealed as much rouleau formation. It is a big concern. It has emerged more than ever within the last 5.5 years, not by coincidence. And the smart meters produce an exponentially larger amount of wireless radiation compared to mobile devices. So the fact that Eversource, with support from fairly large entities and a lot of money in the billions, believes that it can impose something which is going to present great harms to a large percentage, now more than ever, because, and here's the tough part, the Earth's electromagnetic field has declined down to a strength of 60 to 65% within the last several decades, and we are in the midst of what is referred to as a galactic current sheet polarity reversal, which will also bring every object in the solar system to that same kind of reversal. It has very, very, very massive implications. I do want to start talking about it because the window is somewhere between 20 and 25 years maximum. Again, I realize this is news probably to a lot of people that are hearing it, but the evidence exists. James Webb Telescope has detected some of this. Long story short, to bring it back full circle, it is going to directly impact the risk factor with respect to not just smart meter infrastructure, but also photovoltaic array infrastructure. These are big, big concerns that are not being talked about. There is a universal aspect to quote unquote health called zeta potential, which is something some people in engineering are familiar with relative to charge values, pH. And a lot of the policy decisions of the last 125 years have severely compromised it, even before the threats that are now emerging. So with that in mind, I am asking the city of Easthampton to consult its council and seek an injunction to prevent any further efforts on Eversource's part to force this technology into our purview and within the range of us being harmed as a consequence. And I know a lot more with respect to possible mitigating technologies, but the bottom line is we have got to send a message to Eversource. And I also feel like I've already started to put the feelers out, the possibility of Easthampton generating its own electricity.
Great, thank you for sharing, Jim. I know you had emailed with me earlier, if there's anything more that you think would be helpful to share from an
I'm available. Anybody wants to talk about this? It won't be an easy conversation, but it will be a very informative one.
Great, thank you for sharing.
And just point of order, we're not really allowed to respond or discuss that in our current agenda, right?
Yeah, so Connie, feel free to jump in too. So my understanding is because this is our first meeting, that's why this is a pretty broad and pretty small agenda. But I did want to give space for time for folks to share. So that's my understanding as I guess temporary runner of this meeting. That's fine. Any other thoughts on that front from your end, Connie, as far as public speak goes?
Yeah, it's not a part of our agenda, so it's not something that we would discuss. If we wanted to discuss this in the future, we'd have to put it on our agenda, but right now it's just it's a public speak matter.
Great, thank you for confirming. With that in mind, anyone else have anything for public speak that you would like to share? So let's move to new business. Okay, so I did pass out for folks in the room a description of the purpose of the rent committee, and I thought it would be good for us to just kind of touch point on that now that we're finally together. And I know that Connie and Jana, you don't have this in front of you, so I'll briefly read it through if that's okay with everybody, and then we can discuss any other questions or things that come up with regards to the purpose and focus. So when we put this together, we wanted to establish a rent study committee, which would be comprised of 9 different members appointed by a city council president, with up to 3 of those members being city councilors. So that's myself and Councilor Dedham, up to 2 members being representatives from the Affordable and Fair Housing Committee, and at least 2 members being renters in Easthampton, and at least 2 members being landlords in Easthampton. The committee will have 2 tasks. The first is to explore the creation of a legislative petition to the Massachusetts General Court requesting that Easthampton be allowed to implement rent stabilization. The second is to study, analyze, and review any other acts that the city might take to more effectively support and protect Easthampton renters. This should include a review of the city's existing bodies and programs related to housing. It will be up to the committee to decide how often to report to council, but they need not wait until the task is complete if they identify items that should be amended or deleted. Where the committee's reports indicate a need for change, other council committees, such as ordinance or rules and government relations, may introduce those items as new business. So that's the overall purpose that we had come up with originally. Questions, thoughts, comments on that? Yes.
Doesn't seem like all of the different members are filled. Or are we,
So
are the missing people tonight actually filled?
Yes, great question. I believe that with the people who are not here tonight, we are okay as far as the rules go. We can certainly double check that, but I did look at it briefly beforehand, and I'm pretty sure we're covered as far as the different roles are concerned. And we do have, I think, a space or 2. So. Yes.
Question, and we went over this, so I bring it up just because I was planning to. So this is the original request that you guys put to city council back in April. The letter that we got from the city council president had a different framing of this that didn't mention the legislative petition at all. It sort of skipped past that and went towards the analyzing broader city policies. So I just want to be clear, like, that we don't have to go back and confirm this, like, with city council as, like, to get started on that work.
Yes. And Connie, please feel free to jump in, Councilor Dedham. But so my understanding is that, so what I read out to you is what we approved at the city council level. So it was approved at the rules and government relations level, which I'm on that committee. And then we brought that to council, and that was approved and voted on and signed through. So my understanding is that this is our stated purpose, and we can follow this, and should follow this as far as what we're working on. The letter, I believe, is just confirmation and sort of a welcome to the committee, but doesn't supersede what was voted on by council.
Okay.
But Councilor Dedham, feel free to jump in if there's a different interpretation. Great, perfect. Thank you. All right. Other questions?
I don't have a question, but I do need to jump off now because I have to get to this meeting. But I appreciate all of you being here for this, and I look forward to working with all of you moving forward.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thanks, Connie.
Bye, Connie.
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but
Sorry about that, Jana. I think we ended it for everybody by accident.
You need to restart the recording.
Yes, I'm going to restart the recording. Give me 1 second.
I'm just glad I was able to get back on, so no problem.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's still recording. Perfect.
Phyllis, can I interject for 1 second? When
Yes.
might I be able to ask a question to John with respect to Pioneer Valley? I don't know what in terms of format when I'd be able to, if that'd be something after meeting, but I definitely would like to talk to you if you have an opportunity, Janet, afterwards, if that's the best time for it.
Kayam can give you my email address, my personal address, and you can email me anytime, and I'm happy to answer any
Okay.
questions. Yeah.
I'm very concerned about LIHEAP right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Great.
Happy to talk.
Thank you for that. And I think everyone should we should all have each other's contact info anyway at this point. So if anyone needs it again, of course, feel free to reshare. So I think the question was around timing and
Do we have
timeline.
a
So
goal of when we should
That's
finish our
my
work?
that's my goal with this 2B is to talk about all that stuff, or at least as much as we can get through tonight, because we have a lot to chat through. So definitely timeline and is there an endpoint to this committee is one thing we can discuss today. A couple other things I'll just throw out there pretty quickly, and then we can pick one place to start is I do think we should chat about real basics, like when do we want to meet? How often do we want to meet? This is a council committee. We can meet as often as we like because there's nothing set in stone. A lot of city committees meet monthly, some don't, some meet more often, some meet less often. So that's one thing to think about. The other thing to think about is structure. So for right now, and I'm happy in the next couple of meetings as well to kind of take charge and run and just make sure like the agenda is put together and there's some like logistical stuff on the back end as far as reserving rooms, but we probably will want to vote at some point on a more formal chair and then perhaps like a secretary as well who'll take meeting notes while we're in the meeting. So again, nothing we have to decide tonight, and actually we shouldn't do it tonight because we'll want to vote with as much of the full committee as possible. But another thing to think through as far as like logistics in terms of going forward. Yes, go ahead.
Key question, because I think his whatever the outcome is, turns on how much he's effective. Is there any point that Omar might be able to attend one of the meetings to give us an update, strategize what exactly the circumstances are? I have a pretty good idea, and I'm a little scared because of the amount of pushback that's occurring from Mass Fiscal Alliance, among others.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think that he's on the committee of regional governments and municipalities. So
I believe so,
this would be like if we did do a legislative petition, it would go across his desk. So that might be a good thing to just like game out with him a little bit. So
yeah, absolutely. And we can certainly invite him to a meeting and that might be something where, for example, if his schedule doesn't fit with ours, we can find something that works for everybody. But I know myself and especially, Councilor Denham is in very close contact with him on a regular basis. And so we'll certainly invite him to a future meeting. I think that's a great idea. So
yeah. Or even if the surrogate, or if you could just give us a written statement, that would be, yeah, but I think that's a good.
Yeah,
that might be put him out less too if he's in the midst of trying to advocate for this. It makes sense that it doesn't necessarily mean he has to be present. He could even be, by Zoom.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll have the ability in all meetings going forward to have it be hybrid. So especially as we go into winter months with weather and everything, we don't always need to be present here in the room.
Yeah. Sometimes it's easier to like screen share.
Exactly. Yeah. Do we want to go back to the timeline question? So I'll just start off with regards to your question, Carolyn. My thought around the committee is that this committee has a stated purpose. And so there's no timing that's built in. So if it takes us a month, then we can conclude. If it takes us 2 years, then we can conclude. And there's a bit of a broader part in here around sort of analyzing, reviewing the bodies and programs. So this could be stretched out beyond even just the legislative piece of it. But those are the two big pieces. So as far as like an endpoint, I don't particularly see that being any time in the immediate future. I would anticipate probably at least a year for this committee to be in progress, maybe longer. And that's my thought process, but happy to open up to anyone else who has other thoughts on timing or timeline for the committee.
But just to tease that out,
Yes.
I mean, we may do one step of the work. We could do the legislative piece, or we could study one piece and make a recommendation where we don't have to wait for the year or whatever we think we need. We can be doing acts as we go along.
Yeah, and these two purposes don't have to be one after the other. They can be happening concurrently.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interject without asking, but has there been any advice from council for the city as to the immediacy with respect to trying to get an injunction against this sort of practice on the part of the property owners, because the urgency factor, again, to me, a lot of people are getting eviction notices and they've got no recourse at this point under the circumstances.
There's nothing specific from council with regard to that. It is something that we're very aware of and it's a top priority.
Yeah.
But there's no like directive from council as to this committee especially. It's just more, this committee has been formed and now it's kind of up to us.
No, I understand. And I just want to
Yes.
clarify, I mean COUNSEL, not COUNCIL.
Oh, I see.
I'm saying the lawyers for the city, because I really feel like that's what needs to be happening, is some action, something to impede the progress of this insanity has to occur, or a lot of people, more people are going to suffer before there is some sort of effective relief.
So I do not believe that that is on the plate of the city's council at this moment. But I think that falls under our purview as one of the actions that we could suggest or start to bring them in to discuss for sure. So
To take this up and like how we're working. I mean, there are urgent emergency situations that we're in, and I think, putting it out, you know, we're also crafting something that can stand for the long term and be
Yeah.
protective and have our vision of how we want things to be sustainable for people who live here and rent here, and
Yep.
and there are the landlords as well, you know. So maybe we try and hold both of that. but don't-
And no means, the duality is very wise, because obviously we want something that's durable as well as long lasting. But in the short term, I feel like there's got to be something done, because by all indications, it's not letting up.
yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I agree that I think this committee should be focused, like some of us should be focused on, or some of our work should be focused on the more immediate. How can the city get better at reacting and supporting these tenants in the now? And I do think that we can sort of walk and chew gum at the same time in that way, where we can do some more longer term, which I want to speak to. But so to give some background, my initial meeting, I think it was with you and Connie, where I presented this. I was really inspired by what the city of Boston did in 2022, where they created the mayor herself initiated this committee rather than city council, but it's a legal committee, special committee, to study a rent control petition, or a home rule petition to do rent control. What I really loved about their model was that they did over 6 meetings of the committee, but also over an entire year, they had 5 or 6 listening sessions with different types of stakeholders in the community, talking about the specific issues around the rent control policy, what sort of units would be excluded, how long new construction would be excluded, all those specific local conditions that would form the policy that makes sense in Easthampton. And so they spent a year doing that buy-in in public education, and also giving people a voice, like landlords and developers and tenants. And then that propelled the process. Once there was all that public buy-in, they had to send the petition to the state and also vote on it as a municipality. And it didn't pass. It got stalled in committee at the state, but at the same time, they had built this whole network of involved people, and they had buy-in on this policy. So that was sort of my inspiration for trying to get this set up, was really setting up platforms or listening sessions to really start asking those questions about what this policy could look like in Easthampton, and through that build the momentum and build the public buy-in for the local thing. So I think that in terms of timeline, that does look like a years long, 2 years long process. It's important to get it right, and it's important to make sure all parties feel heard, and it's not just a tenants versus landlords, developers thing. It's how can we as a community build a healthier housing market that has guardrails that we can all agree on protect what makes our community special. And I think that that's just, yeah, I think that that's a really amazing model for this kind of work.
That's great. And I think I was just taking notes as we're chatting, and it sounds like a nice step. If we were to even like think about splitting some of the committee focus, like maybe half the committee focuses on one piece, half focuses on another. So if we were to start looking at that legislative piece of it, that the Boston policy draft might be a good first place to start by reviewing, because I know you're obviously very deeply infused. Jana, I'm assuming you are as well with some of these topics. I know for me, and I have to actually like pull it up and read it through, but that would be probably a good first step. Is that something you kind of would recommend?
Yeah, so that was something I forgot to mention ahead of this meeting, and I didn't want to get too ahead of myself because I know we're just starting. I don't want to like whatever, but I have pulled together all of the public recordings and the public PowerPoint presentations, as well as the home rule petition. I've compiled all those files together so I can make that available to the group. All of the meetings were recorded and broadcast, and the presentations are great and they're very clear. All of that stuff is resources available to us to use as a template if we want, and we can take it and leave what we feel like, but it has all the pieces there. It has like really good descriptions of the areas of the policy that we would need to look at as a local community. So yeah, no, I would agree that I could share that around. And
yeah, it sounds great. I think that'd be a really good like action step between now and our next meeting. And I'm with you. I kind of want to like go dive into all the, the meaty stuff of it. But before we do that, I'm going to bring it back a little bit. I also want to chat a bit more about logistics before we kind of get back into the content piece. Obviously we're not all here, but for the folks who are here, what are your thoughts around cadence of meeting? Monthly is a good default, but are there any, yays or nays where you're like, I think it needs to be more than monthly, less than monthly? Any other considerations for scheduling?
Monthly works for me.
Yeah,
As necessary, maybe twice a month, but only as necessary, because people are trying to strike a balance more than ever right now.
Yeah.
There may be instances where it would be good to have another meeting in the course of a month, depending upon whether you've got holidays to deal with or other considerations.
Jana, I feel like you want to speak. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think monthly is good. And I also think if we break into subcommittees, it's possible, subcommittee might meet in between the meetings, or we may decide that subcommittees are meeting and we don't want to meet for 2 months because, I think, but I think I agree that setting a monthly meeting kind of like grounds us and like, this is when we meet, and then we can always change it.
a little rip off of that is like we're meeting monthly. That's our long-term work. But right now, because we are in situation of immediate need, I mean, maybe it is twice a month for the next couple of months. And one of the meetings, I don't know if we want to split topics. One of the meetings is devoted to how can we provide support to people right now before we lose them from the community.
I think it's important as we think about this is that we're really clear of like what the city can do, right? Mm-hmm. So we're not going to solve everybody's problem, and we're not going to stop all landlords from doing what they're doing now. So I just think I go into this like, what can the city do? What are the tools? What are the resources? But I want us to be realistic about, I don't want us to get disappointed if we can't. And I think, Kevin's here and David's not, but like, there is a business aspect to all of this. I mean, people are landlords and developers because it's their business. And so I think we want to be very even in how we like look at these items and think about, it's Kevin's livelihood probably. So I want to be careful about how we move forward realistically of what is possible. I mean, we've learned this, we've been on the housing partnership a long time. We have learned many times like what we are actually capable of changing and what we are not capable of changing. And, sometimes that's my 2 cents.
Can I interject for a second? Again, I don't know whether or not I'm breaking format, but I want to speak to Kevin being the sole person who is a landlord here.
Oh, no, actually, I'm a landlord as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yes.
I heard, but I mean, Kevin identified heavily, immediately, or primarily you two, Carolyn and Felicia. as I broached in the first meeting that we had, and I forget what month it was, I think the key more than anything else is to acknowledge the fact that landlords do need some means of being able to offset the difference if it is intellectually honest. There are those who are absolutely taking advantage of the situation. My own landlord, has been made very clear, is doing just that. My idea basically looks at the possibility with accountability, with, that it can be demonstrated, some sort of subsidy system whereby instead of paying out directly to the tenants, the landlords would receive a certain amount based upon what the tenant's increase in rent was. And would have come from some sort of public source. I don't know which, but at least that begins to acknowledge the issues which are genuinely arising with costs that landlords are bearing as a consequence of this end run by the larger corporations and the investment firms.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to respond or not.
No, I'm really just listening at this point, honestly, it's, obviously I do have a perspective that, yes, that's our business model. We have hundreds of tenants, not just in Easthampton, but in the area. And I think, we've always tried to be a responsible landlord. But I can also tell you, yes, we do run a business. It is for profit, expenses go up. So when I was asked to join this, my initial reaction was I need this like a hole in the head. But then I said, okay, I think it is an important topic. It's important to bring a different perspective. Not that I think that some of the things I've read about that have gone on are okay, but at the same time, I'm not going to pretend to understand the minutia that went into that. I don't know the particular property. I don't know the circumstances that the condition of it. I don't, so I'm not going to pretend to comment anything that I don't personally know, but I can, my understanding of this, and perhaps I have it way wrong, was that we were looking at more specifically rent control, not subsidies or this or that. I mean, and any of that I'm fine with, but I guess I would like to understand what the goal is. I thought the goal was to establish a program that is more about rent control and making sure that that is fair for the tenants, as also a path forward for the landlords. So, example, and not to go into the weeds, but just something to think about is if somebody purchases a property that's needs substantial rehabilitation, I think you should be in your complete right to purchase that and give tenants fair notice and either say this is what's going to happen and in turn we're going to fix your property up, or there's a lot of details and a bigger picture out there. I am not for buying something, doing absolutely nothing to the property and doubling rents. Yes, even as a landlord, I have an issue with that. But I think some things may get painted a little differently sometimes. And I understand if I was living in those units and something happened and I've been there 20 years and somebody says, hey, you got 60 days to get out because we're going to remodel this and charge, 3 times the rent. I understand that's a problem for them and how that's perceived. So anyways, I really just wanted to sit, listen and offer a different perspective, but I would like to understand what, as time goes on, more narrow our goal, because as you say, Jenna brought up a great point. There's simply issues we're not going to solve here.
Yeah, and I'll respond really quickly. Then I know people are like, I want to respond too. Let me just quickly respond. So thank you. First of all, we have a lot of different perspectives on this committee, which is why I'm particularly excited about this committee, because I think we will have times where we'll butt heads, and that's going to be good because that's exactly why we're coming together. So it's great to have your perspective. It's great to have all of your perspectives on this, and for the folks who aren't here too, who will have their perspectives too. The other thing I wanted to just kind of quickly respond to, Kevin, was the sort of question around like the goal and the purpose and kind of scope of everything. And so just as a reminder, there's the legislative piece, which is specifically exploring, can we petition the state to, do a home rule situation around rent stabilization. So that's the first big piece. And then the other piece is a little broader, and that's where I think some of what you started to kind of get into proposing, Jim, might fall into that. But the second piece is around really like we're a study committee, and that's in our name. And I think that's something to keep in mind is like we're going to be studying like what are all the different programs. Like we heard from Chaim and Jana, like you're involved in the Affordable and Fair Housing Commission. I know there's other housing related things out there. There's other groups that might be doing work. There's the Springfield No One Leaves, which has been really active in Easthampton, really helpful. So I think part of that work will be for us to essentially pull all that together and say, like, here's the landscape and here's all the resources. So if you are in that position where, your out of state landlord bought the place and is jacking up the rent 3 times, then here's like a place to go to for specific needs. It could be legal assistance, it could be something else. The other piece, which I think is part of that, is city specific, which is what can we do to protect renters? And that's where it is going to be a balance of like long-term and short-term urgency. So I don't want to dismiss the urgency piece of it, but at the same time, we are not going to be able to spend all of our time putting out the fires that are actually happening and burning quite largely right now. So that's going to be a tricky balance for us to navigate as a committee. And I don't have all the right answers. I don't know how that's going to play out in the coming months and years, but that is something just that I'm really aware of, is that we are going to have to balance out, the situations that are happening right now, along with the knowledge that probably this committee is not going to have a ton of immediate solutions at the moment, but part of our work is to pull the landscape together and then source the ideas like you started coming up with, Jim.
Right.
So that's going to be the tricky balance for us to navigate.
I'll make this quick. Kevin, I just want to say, one of the reasons I proposed the whole notion of subsidies directly to you rather than the landlords having to chase after the tenants for the extra, because if they were to receive it, is because there is certainly a pragmatic aspect in terms of addressing the problems you might encounter with a market that is being deliberately driven up by outside forces, which is certainly the case in this instance. But I also wanted to say, and I really emphasized this in my own way during the city council presentation, my testimonial, the economic realities right now are not going to allow people to survive unless something changes dramatically in terms of the way the economy is being run, the opportunities being far less conditional. We're facing a disaster, and I think a lot of us can see it coming. So this is just the latest symptom of the conditions, the lack of health out there with respect to the economy. So the more that any of us, regardless of age, are able to contribute, and have some sort of return, not because we need it, not because we want it, certainly we would, but we need it, the more there might be a way of remedying the situation, at least somewhat. Right now, it's a perfect storm. And that's what scares me the most, is so many people that could be contributing and want to contribute because they do recognize it's in their best interest as much as anyone else's, can't.
Yeah, no, and thank you for, again, highlighting the urgency. This is a very topical, timely, and important issue. And so we have a small piece of it, but yes, it's a huge issue all around for sure. Carolyn, yes.
I was going to take this up. And even if we cannot be solving it in the short term, I think my idea is like facilitating communication and connection to resources, and that just the communication can help. I mean, you're in the room, so we're communicating with you. So that's great as a landlord, and we're communicating with each other. But even without being able to immediately fix things, the listening and trying to connect has value.
Yeah.
As long as we don't burn out and take all the time, like we need to keep some time safe for the longer term, even while we're responding to the shorter term.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I my thoughts are, I think very much echoing sort of what you were saying around the legislative piece. Like, that is something that the city can do. Like, there's a very straightforward process of like sending a legislative petition, a home rule petition to the state. Like, there are very specific requirements and a procedure around that. And so that's something that we can start, and will just require a lot of like outreach and organizing and having those conversations and hearing input and all that. The other piece, I think, the broader studying, like, I think everything that you guys are saying is definitely falling under that. And one thing I want to know is your idea, I think, is very similar to like how rental vouchers work. So I think that there's ways that the city could help landlords figure out how to navigate the rental voucher system, or like expand on resources that already exist, because there are things, I think that's one of the things where the city doesn't have the fiscal ability to like,
Yeah.
And that's knowledge.
yeah.
Right. And I tacitly acknowledge that for sure, Kyle. But I think also the way the description I'm using might be more, the word voucher sometimes I think is not well received by a lot of property owners. I can't be certain, but that's what I instinctively sense. So that's why I said the word subsidy to me really acknowledges their receipt of it as opposed to the voucher being more for the benefit of the tenant, which isn't to say it's not a question of whether they deserve it. It's just that the landowner feels more like there's an acknowledgement of his need or her need as much as there is of the tenant.
Yeah, no, and I'm saying that because I do think that it's a good policy tool to like address this issue. But I also think it makes me think of how we can work with the different committees to harmonize the work better. Like how can we get the housing authority better in contact with the housing partnership and make sure that we're checking in with the needs of our like public housing tenants. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities where we can review like the purposes of boards and committees and figure out if the city is actually set up to support tenants in like a structural way too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think some of what I think is being raised up is sort of, and I don't want to say this pejoratively, but I'll just say like it's kind of in the weeds a little bit. And so it's like, I think when we get to that point around where we're able to say, this is the landscape and here's all the different tools and resources like the subsidies or rent vouchers or some combination will be a great piece of that. But it's not something we can like get deep into today, unfortunately.
Fair point, fair point. But we
yeah.
appear to be less adversarial to Kevin, I hope, as well as both of you.
And I think what's really great too is like when we get to those points in our timeline and our discussions, like we'll be able to say, hey, these are different things that we're going to be presenting or that we've kind of collected, given everyone in the room and what we're representing in our roles, like how does that land? Like, I think the question is great. You know, I'm like with Carolyn, I'm a very small landlord. I only have one tenant who lives next door to me and we're neighbors. But if you were to say like, Felicia, you know, if we came and said, here's a rent voucher system, like, what would you feel like? I think that's a great discussion for us to have. So we can kind of workshop some of that reception here before it goes out to the larger city so that we can kind of anticipate issues or concerns or, you know, you'll probably have insights, Kevin, and I know of the other folks on committee who aren't here tonight around like, what does this mean for XYZ? Or like you mentioned from the business perspective, if you're trying to renovate something, right? So I think all of that will be good for us to sort of hash out and workshop internally because we're representative of the larger city there as well too. So anyway, and Jana, I know you're still the sole person online, so I don't mean to ignore you, but anything else that you want to add in at this point too? So I've had my back to you a little bit.
No, right. No, it's fine. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Yes, one other point of clarification. I'm assuming this is the case, but when we are referring to tenants, we're strictly referring to residential.
Not necessarily, I don't think.
Commercial art, I mean, artist space is a big issue in the community too, so.
And that could be part of it too, because I know before I got on council earlier this year, I was part of Easthampton Community Arts or Easthampton City Arts rather. Sorry, it's been a long day. Easthampton City Arts, ECA, and also ECC. And so I was very involved in the whole Cottage Street studio situation that happened. And there was a lot of discussion at the ECA level around are there protections or basically everything we're talking about right now, but for commercial tenants. So I think it's definitely a piece of the puzzle for sure. That's my take, of course. So, yeah. Okay, so what I've heard so far is we are committing to at least monthly, maybe more, and especially if we split out into subcommittees, it might make sense to keep like a regular monthly meeting and then maybe there'll be some subcommittee work in between. We do not have to necessarily wait until November to have our next meeting, especially since this is not everybody. So we could have another meeting earlier. I hesitate to bring this up, but I will anyway. Are there days of the week or times of day that tend to work better for folks? Because I have heard a bit of everything from people as I was trying to get this meeting on the books. And
this was not necessarily the best time.
Nor I for me. Thursday,
yeah, I know.
Dedicated.
I was asking like
it was
people aren't here.
It was a challenge. Well, I think Connie had something come up last minute. I know Donna, who's on the committee, is traveling, so she's not able to be here,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure about the other two folks or 2 or 3 folks who couldn't make it, but we don't have to find a day or time right now, but if there is anything in particular, like for example, I think for the most part, my recollection is that most people prefer sort of like after hours, like after 5 p.m. And I know for me, sometimes I go up until 5, so 5 is tricky. So like 5:15 onwards or 5:30 onwards even. There was, I think, one person who was like during the day, please. I think that's a little tricky.
In a pinch, I mean, if there was an augmented, an additional meeting, I could do maybe early afternoon or something with enough notice, but
Okay.
yeah, definitely after hours. And for me, Mondays and Wednesdays would probably be best as of now.
Mondays and Wednesdays are best for me too.
I'll make it easy. I can't do Wednesday, Friday, so that's unfortunately that would be hard.
Monday,
Yeah.
how do you feel about Monday, Kyle?
Monday.
Jana.
Monday.
Yeah, Mondays are fine. 5:15 is a little early for me.
It could be 6 even,
Yeah.
so it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
5
later.
o'clock hour.
Yeah,
Okay.
6 is easier.
Okay, great. Awesome. So what I might do then is I might try to set up another meeting and like maybe like.
Oh, actually, the next Mondays. But
Yeah, the next 2 Mondays are like forums for council. They're like debate forums.
right.
Yeah. I can look to see about setting, I mean, that puts us in November anyway, but I can look to set something up before Thanksgiving, because I think it'll be tricky. So maybe the first week or
Yeah,
the first
especially
week.
with all Thursdays, holidays, everything is a holiday from Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's on.
I'm just not the third. I'm not available.
The 10th would work for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah, 10th is great for me too.
Okay, I'll target the 10th for now, and then
Okay.
again, we don't have
Maybe
to.
we should hold it.
Yeah,
Hold it
we
sixth,
can, we can always adjust, and like, even if we say we're usually gonna meet on the, whatever, like the second Monday of the month, we can always adjust in this. It's not like not locked in stone for that one. Okay, great. I will handle taking care of that. So I think, from my perspective, for our next meeting, I'll set up the meeting, get it on the calendar, get a room and everything. What I think would be great to think about for the committee, and I'll email this out to everybody afterwards too, is structure. So if you'd like to take on a more like formal role, think about that, and I'll put that on the agenda for next month. And then the other thing is subcommittee. So if you are already thinking that you'd like to focus on perhaps like a certain topic or a certain subcommittee, come to the meeting with that in mind, because we can talk about that during the meeting and kind of make that a bit more formal, and then go from there as far as what those we'll start to work on. Yes, go ahead.
I just have a point of clarification.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer this now. I know that you have a lot going on and you're on council and you have other things. But I do think that you might be very uniquely qualified to be the chair of this committee. And I just wanted to gauge your interest ahead of time. And you don't have to give an answer, but like,
I'm happy to answer. I don't have a burning desire to be chair, but I'm more than happy to if it makes sense to people.
That's a fair
I'm
answer.
not here saying, please let me add this to my resume, but I'm more than happy to. But again, if someone else is interested, then please be my guest by far. But I'm happy to if need be. So we do not have to make any decisions today. We shouldn't anyway. So yeah. I think that's most of what I wanted to cover in this initial meeting. But we are here. We still have some time. Anything else that hasn't been discussed that falls under new business? Because this is we're a new committee, so it's all new business at this point.
Has there been any reaction by the business community at this point? I mean, conversations with Mo at the Chamber of Commerce about, because I mean, it has a direct impact on the desirability of Easthampton if the people that are being pushed out, certainly in the instance of overqualification with respect to what's available, because there's not a lot of jobs available. In my estimation, with respect to quality of life, there's just not a lot of jobs available to improve upon it. There are the utilitarian ones, which are desirable to, everybody else availing themselves of, those services. But in terms of being able to really address shortfalls with respect to quality of life, especially those which would be produced by major loss of tenants, the business community, I guess what I'm asking, is there an awareness of how much it would impact their experience of Easthampton?
I have not heard anything super specific, but that doesn't mean that there isn't awareness. I don't know if anyone else has heard anything from the business side of things. Yeah, I mean, it could be a good question for the chamber to touch base with them about that, and I can certainly follow up and ask.
Yeah, that makes me think of two things. So, one side thought that I had about something this group could do is some sort of like data collection or like survey. And I think that could be a great opportunity to gauge the business community and like are they hearing from their employees about rent? And is that a big
That's a good point.
barrier to hiring? And then it might be cool to do like resident surveys as well as something. So that's just a side idea. But the other thing that I wanted to mention was I think it might be a good idea to preemptively reach out to organizations like Springfield No One Leaves, so we can get their input on how like the public input can like, because I know that they will be really good at driving some turnout that's specifically around tenants. And I think like they mentioned having developers that are really on board with this work too, so that might be good. And we want to reach out to a broad spectrum of people and perspectives for those like listening sessions in the future. So it might just be.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. And then I guess this is for question is for Carolyn and Kevin. Are you either of you in the Mass Landlords group? Do you know them?
No.
So Mass
No.
Landlords is a statewide nonprofit for landlords. I am a member of it because when we bought our place 4.5 years ago, I was like, I've never been a landlord before. I only rented. And they provide a lot of resources for landlords, but it's an interesting group to be part of because I get a lot of that sort of other side of the coin around like how they're thinking about things like rent stabilization and what they're lobbying and for and things like that. So I was just curious, but that could be another group to just bring into the fold as far as just touching base because there's a lot of people who are part of that group across the whole entire state. So cool.
So I guess that brings up another question, and kind of alluded, both of you did. Is there a general consensus in the state of Massachusetts, any articulation that housing is viewed as a human right or residency, shelter, however you want to phrase it?
I mean, I
rescinded the right to shelter, so
Yeah.
I think there's consensus that we have an affordable housing crisis.
yeah.
And that there's not enough affordable home housing at all levels for people to live here, and it's hurting Massachusetts in general. I hear that more than I hear anything else.
Yeah, not a lot of rights language, but definitely a lot of like, we recognize that housing has become an economic like ball and chain, and we won't grow as an economy or as a state unless we like invest in building more. And that's been like the main thrust of it. If that helps.
How do I put this into words? I feel like that the more people, if there's a recognition on the part of someone, for example, who's coming to Easthampton or any community, that this is critical, that if people don't have somewhere to go, which is going to be life affirming, healthy for them in their own way, it's going to be a subjective consideration, then it's difficult to feel any real connection. I feel the more that there's an ability to communicate that aspect, like Easthampton could be home for you, we want to know how you feel sort of attitude. There are communities you can walk into and immediately sense that. And then there's others that's like, I don't want to be here 15 seconds longer. And I think that Easthampton, to my way of thinking, at least somewhat communicates that feeling. It doesn't necessarily have the ability to follow through, but it's a valuable consideration because when people don't feel like that they have a home, everything falls apart.
Yeah, I would say I think that the fact that this committee exists and that we've been discussing this at various levels in the state, or not the state, in the city and in community, I think is in and of itself a signal that this is an important issue for people in Easthampton and people who are thinking about moving to Easthampton. And again, I think one of the purposes of this committee is to figure out, how can we bring all this together to
Yeah.
highlight, what is possible and how we want to support, and also, what is happening right now in all the different areas of everything that we've talked about. I can share really quickly. So my husband is from Connecticut, from a town called Ansonia, which is actually very similar to Easthampton in a lot of ways, like old factory town, lots of old buildings, just like we have here, similar size, although they're a little bit bigger.
Yep. I
But
know
they
of it.
just, their mayor just put in, or I don't know if it's the mayor or city council, they literally just put into effect a ruling where they refuse to build any new housing at all. So they're
Yeah.
doing tons of new construction immediately right in the downtown area. So imagine
Yeah.
like brand new construction, like if Eastworks was going up today and they have that kind of building, and they're saying, good news, no housing is going into this building at all. And that's how they're approaching it. And so I think, if I were looking at cities in terms of where, what are the cities
Yeah.
thinking about, that I think shows how in and of itself, like here in Easthampton, we are not taking that kind of approach.
I agree, and this is the conversation I have with a good friend of mine from Torrington. The situation in Connecticut is, I'm going to be blunt, dire with respect to housing. Far worse than Massachusetts, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's helpful, I can share with you some resources that have both been released by the state and also like the clients that I work for at work and some of the
Okay.
stuff that I've been working on. I think just off the top of my head, there have been projections that say we need over 17,000 new units of housing by 2035. And that's been something that the state is really pushing and agreeing that we need to be making those investments. It's tied into the Affordable Homes Act and all the
Yeah.
bond money that the state is trying to bring to that. And I can also share with you the statewide housing plan that the website actually just got released today that goes through like all the things, the priorities that the state is focused on when it comes to housing, and like
Yeah.
it's called a home for everyone, which I think is really fitting to what you were saying. So
Yeah. I
I can send it to everyone.
Well, could we have a older city? Are we allowed to have older we share?
I
No, we
think
can't just
we
have a shared.
Let me check though.
We just can't like
Otherwise-
comment on anything.
Yeah, so that's the
Okay.
other thing I want to mention really quickly.
Oh, yes, what are
Yeah,
our
so
rules we need to
Has,
know?
and I don't know how it works because this is a council committee versus like a mayoral committee, but did
Right.
any of you have, or did all of you have to like swear in at all or anything like that?
I didn't get this letter that you were talking about.
Well, I
I think
didn't
it's
get,
because your email was incorrect. I can forward it to you, Carolyn, because I
Okay.
think there was the wrong email for you.
Okay.
I'll forward it to you. Yeah, so basically, so in mayorally appointed committees, there's a process where technically you're supposed to go to city clerk, you like get sworn in, and then they give you some literature on like open meeting law, and there's some ethical stuff too. I don't think that happened for this committee, which is fine.
no,
I
I
didn't
don't
go
get
through appointments
anything of
either.
that sort.
But we are bound by open meeting law, so if anyone needs like a refresher on that, I'm happy to send some info around. But basically, when there's quorum, like so for example, like right now, we're able to meet and talk, but it has to kind of basically go by whatever's on the agenda. So for the next meeting, what I'll do is I'll send over a proposed agenda before it's published. So that way, if there's anything that's missing or you want to add in, we'll
Sure.
get that together and then the city clerk will publish it. But technically, like, if you brought that's why I told you, Jim, to bring up your point during public speak, because it's not specifically on the agenda. If we're meeting outside of our regular scheduled meetings, if there's more than, we have 9 people, so there's more than half of the people, then you have to be very careful. Like, you cannot talk about the committee work, because that would violate open meeting law. And then if we share like a document around, for example, like we can't deliberate or discuss, we could just acknowledge. So I could say, here's a document, make sure you read it. You could say, great.
Yeah.
That's why you'll see me say like, write to me separately, or like, don't respond to the group email.
Okay. I don't
So-
entirely understand the logistics, but I see what you're saying. So if I wanted to make a request to revisit the Eversource item concern next meeting, how would I go about
Email
doing that?
me for now,
Okay.
and then remind me that you'd like to add that to the agenda.
All right, definitely. I will do that for sure.
Okay, and so I'll forward the letter to you, Carolyn, and then I can send the open meeting law. I think there's like a document I have somewhere. I'll send that out to everyone so you can see it. And I'll ask about the folder because I'm not sure. I think it's okay and it should be pretty straightforward, but I'll just double check with technology before I go ahead and mess anything up on the drive. So
This might be an agenda item for later, like if we're collecting resources and we want to look at them, maybe there's a folder we want to create for the general public to here's housing resources.
I would imagine probably in the future, but maybe not
Right,
at this
like-
stage.
Right.
Yeah.
But kind of in that beginning work of making sure people have resources. So maybe I'm suggesting agenda item is this how it work.
I mean, I think
Housing Partnership has a website on the planning page, and we do post things there, so we could always put stuff there, I think.
The other thing I would say is if there's items which would be of concern to those being directly impacted, is that something which would be part of this proposed page that I think you're referring to a page as a folder, a secondary page on a primary web page?
yeah, and
Well, now
that's
we're deliberating.
but it's fine because we can talk.
I'm
That's why I'm
trying to
like
understand
new
better.
business. New business is a great catch-all on an agenda.
It's true, it's true.
But yeah, I would say like, obviously, once we get there, we'll figure it out. But yes, we can definitely, we will at some point have a mechanism, maybe more than one mechanism to be able to share what we learn with the public, because that's, I think,
Okay.
directly related to that sort of second point around studying, analyzing, reviewing all the other things that we can do. And
The response can be
We'll wanna put
useful
that
for
out,
sure
yeah.
as they arrive.
And one thing that's included in the description is reporting. So for example, we could have somebody, whether it's myself or someone else on the committee, go to city council meetings and do a formal report out, because this is a council committee. So we have that right to do a report out, and that can be on the agenda at any future council meeting. We could also do like a more formal written report with our findings once we go through some of these pieces and have a bit more to share out. So that could be part of it as well. So it could be resources, it could be our analysis, I can't talk, our analysis of what is happening. So all that is in the possibility for us, for things that we could do. So.
Are we following the whole Robert's rules thing?
In what sense?
Like, do I need to move to adjourn before we end this meeting?
Yeah, I think we do need to.
But
So yeah.
Yeah.
Is everyone feeling good? Any other burning questions, thoughts, concerns?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's going to be things I can present next time with respect to clarification. There are things that fell through the cracks, but I think you may have it in your email too. So I'll just reiterate at that point.
Right, perfect. But yes, I will happily entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Perfect, great.
It's
Adjourned
unanimous,
at
right?
6:17 p.m.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.